It's been a long winter, and now that spring has sprung, or hopefully will soon, it's time to get out your e-bike and make sure that it's ready to ride and give it a spring tune-up. Now maybe you rode your e-bike all winter long, or maybe you got it tuned up and then stored it for the winter. It's still a good idea to check a few things before you get on your bike and ride this spring. I'm Dusty with Magnum Bikes, and today we're going to talk about a spring tune-up. Everything to get your bike ready to ride this spring. So put on a floral shirt and join me. One of the first things I like to check is just the overall appearance of the bike. Sometimes you put them in the garage for the winter, maybe a pair of skis fell on them. Just make sure nothing looks broken or twisted or damaged. I'll also just give it a nice dusting while I do that too. This one's got some dust on the fenders. Now, if you've been riding your bike all winter, you'll probably want to do a little bit heavier cleaning. One of the biggest things you need to ride your bike is air in the tires. So just take note, are your tires flat? All tubes will leak over time, so they're probably flat at the end of the winter. Now, this is also a really good time to think about avoiding flats in the future. Where we live in Utah, there's a lot of goat head thorns, really nasty 5-pronged horns that actually look like a goat's head. And I really think that they were an evil plot made by the tire and tube companies to sell more tubes. But anywhere you ride, you want to avoid flats. One good way to do this is with a sealant. This company, Flat Attack, I believe is based in Utah. We use them. There's also a really popular product on the market called Slime. It's this green sealant that has latex and then also some fibers in it, and it should seal a hole up to like 4 or 5 millimeters. You put that in the tubes, or you can buy tubes that already have the slime installed. You can also go with some thicker thorn-resistant tubes. These will have a thicker layer of rubber towards the road where you would encounter any thorns. So think about whether you need to go out and do some shopping and get any sealant or different tubes and air your tires up to the appropriate PSI that's on the sidewall. The next thing I like to consider is the brakes, because e-bikes go and they go fast. So let's look at your disc brakes. All Magnum bikes are gonna have a disc brake that is comprised of this disc rotor, which the brake pinches, and then the disc caliper here. So it's a good idea to just make sure that your brakes have brake at the lever, you feel firmness there. Also that your wheel spins without rubbing, and that your rotor doesn't seem bent or damaged. And that your brake pads have a little bit of pad life left on them. If you've put maybe 500 to 1,000 miles on your bike, you may need brake pads depending on how hard you stop and the conditions. And you can tell the thickness of the brake pads by looking down through the disc caliper. If you need help there, you're gonna have to get brake pads from a bike shop or a retailer anyway, so you can always get some help and have them help you tune those up. If they feel squishy at the lever, if you have hydraulic brakes, you might need a bleed or a top off of fluid to eliminate the air in the line. And if they're a cable brake system, like some of our bikes are, you may just need to adjust the cable tension, but it could be an indicator that your pads are worn too. I also like to keep some rubbing alcohol around. Over the winter, they could get some solvent on them. It could have gotten some grease on the rotor when you greased your chain or lubed your chain last year, so always a good idea to keep some rubbing alcohol on hand. You don't really want to wipe the rotor, but you could certainly spray it down and spray down the brake pads and caliper here. They may squeal a little bit at first till they mate once again, but that's a good way to purge your disc rotor and your brake pads. The next thing I like to look at is the drivetrain. Just make sure that there's no dog hair happens at my house over the winter. Dog hair is floating around, dust, debris, and it clings to the chain where the chain lube or grease is on it. So depending on how dirty your drivetrain is, your cassette, your freewheeler or cassette of gears and your chain, you could clean it with some wash. You could even do some soapy water and a scrub brush. There's lots of special made brushes and tools out there to clean your drivetrain. You may not need that though, because most lubricants, I really like this muck off stuff. Most lubricants will also clean while they lube. So you would just put a thin layer on the chain and then wipe off the excess. A lot of people ask if they can use a household lubricant. It is a good idea to get a chain lube from a bike shop. WD-40, something like this, which you probably have around your house. While it will work, it's really thin. And so it can be kind of messy and it may not stay on the chain and do a very good job. Also, any spray lubricants I like to avoid, mainly because I don't want to get any on my disc rotor or my brakes. Lubricant and brakes don't get along. Another thing I like to take a look at on my bike is just where everything's positioned, the ergonomics of the bike. We get used to our bikes, and after you haven't ridden it for a while, it's fun to think of like how it can be more comfortable for you. Where are your grips located, where are your brakes located. You can adjust your cockpit and where everything is at. The angle of your stem, the stems on almost all of our bikes is adjustable. So it's a good idea to think like, how can I be more comfortable on my bike this year and enjoy it more? Another common one in the spring is people go, wow, my seat feels really hard. And that's because your hiney, your rear hasn't been conditioned to it over the winter, so it feels less comfortable. It's a good time though to get something new on your bike, which will invigorate you and make you want to ride even more. While we're on the saddle, I also like to take a look at my seat post. Make sure that it comes out of the bike easily when you open the quick release, and make sure that there's a little bit of lubricant on there, some grease. If there's not, don't use a thin lube like a chain lube, but a little bit thicker grease that stays in place would be good. Because you want to make sure that that slides in and out really easily. And that your seat post clamp is tight and that the seat won't move when you sit on it. At this point, you may also want to look for leaking oil out of your fork and anything else that would be wrong here. I've stored a bike over the winter and had something fall on it and scratch this part, the stanchion. That's no good. That can damage your seals and can lead to your fork seizing up or losing oil and losing performance. So I like to just visually inspect all that, make sure that it is clean and free of any leaks. And lastly, hopefully over the winter, you stored your battery inside. If you live anywhere where it gets below 45 degrees or so, you certainly should store your battery inside. You will also have wanted to make sure that you charged it once or twice over the winter. So now is when you should pull that battery out of its hibernation place in a cozy, dry place in the house. Make sure that the lights turn on when you press the button on the battery, and then pop that battery back in the bike. It's a good idea to have the keys just to make sure that you know how to remove the battery and kind of remind yourself on how the bike works. You'll also want to take note that there's no corrosion on your battery or on the electrical connection that it plugs to in the bike, no rust or anything else. And also that your little doors for your USB, if you have one, or for your charging port are closed and not damaged, because you'll want to make sure that you can cover those up. And also, if you haven't ridden your bike over the winter, remind yourself how to turn it on, where the power button is on your bike. You can always go back and refresh yourself on our website to find your owner's manual at magnumbikes.com. Make sure you remember where your throttle is, which is your gear shifter, that sort of thing, because you can forget over the long, hard winter. Another one, can you find your keys? If you lose your keys on one of our bikes, you can't take the battery out. You can usually operate it unless it's a folding bike, but that's a good one to remember too, is where did I put my keys? Because if you stored your battery in the house, you can pop it in the bike without the keys, but you won't be able to remove it. Now, tires aired up, bike wiped down, lubricated. Make sure everything's tight. Does anything seem loose or knocking, or do the handlebars twist? Does anything seem like it needs an adjustment? If not, then I would say power on the bike and take your first spring ride. In this process, if something seems wrong on your bike and you're not sure what it is, take it into a bike shop or a certified Magnum dealer and have them just do a safety check or a spring tune-up just to be safe. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more content.